I won't do kind of a lecture, kind of a talk, but I want us to have a discussion because I'm not monopolizing knowledge on communication technique. I want us to contribute and we all learn. Are we all together?
Yes, we are.
Yes,
Okay.
we are.
Yes.
Thank you. Now, I've just developed a problem with my screen as I was trying to do something, but nonetheless, I hope you can see me. Unfortunately, I'm not able to see any of you, but we will continue. So, to our topic of the day, communication technique. Now, I want us, before we even start sharing, I want us to imagine of a situation whereby there is no communication. We live in a family and there is no communication. We live in a society where there's no communication, and we live in the world where people cannot communicate. Which kind of a world would we be having? Have you ever thought of such a world where there is no communication, nobody is talking, nobody is communicating either verbally or non-verbal? Good. Unfortunately, I can't see any of you, so I don't know what the criteria that I'll use to see you talk. But
Two people have raised their hands. One is Catherine, the other one is Daima.
oh, thank you. Please help me notice those who've raised their hands. So maybe we start with Daima. Daima, proceed if you can hear me. Okay, it seems that
Daima seems to be having a problem with the audio. We can't hear anything. Maybe we hear from Catherine first, as he or she prepares.
Thank you. If there was no communication, it would be like a dead world because nothing would be happening.
oh, great. So in other words, we say that communication is life, right?
Something like that.
Okay, thank you. Who else wanna try?
Daima, could you try again? Seems unable.
Okay, now then let me ask now the next question is just to anybody, what is your understanding of communication, rather communication techniques? Any idea that you have?
I usually define communication as that which happens when a message is emitted or transmitted and it is received. That which happens when a message is transmitted or emitted, whichever you choose, and it is received.
It is received.
Thank you.
Great. That's a very good definition. Who else wanna try?
I would say received and understood because I'll receive it and then maybe I cannot decipher it. I cannot understand what the sender was trying to tell me, the recipient.
So received and understood. Great.
Yes.
Thank you. Perfect. Who else wanna try? Okay, so if there's no one who want to try, then I'll just give the basic definition for our own understanding. Now, remember I said that the discussion we are having today, communication technique, we are not doing it like we are going to have an exam. So you have to get every point, but again, please try to get what is important, what is going to help us, because we are not going to have exams, so we don't have to have kind of a classroom kind of a discussion. So let's discuss and let's understand. So communication techniques is the process of conveying, exchanging, sharing information, message, thoughts, or feelings between two or more people. It can be verbally or non-verbally. So we've said that communication technique is the process of conveying, exchanging, or sharing information. So in communication, you must have exchange. So that means there must be a receiver. When somebody is speaking, then you must get somebody who is receiving that communication. And the tricky part is it can be either verbally or non-verbally. So maybe later on we'll be looking at the difference between verbally and non-verbally, and then other techniques that we are going to use. So having said that, there are different types of communication techniques. And tonight, I want us to look at only 5. And then these 5, after I'm done presenting, then we'll have a discussion around. And the first one that we're going to start with will be written communication. Written communication. Now, when we are talking of written communication, this is communication through writing or drawing to pass information from one person to another. Here, say that you can use emails, letters, or pictures. When you're talking about pictures, I know you know of a museum. For those who are lucky enough that you've gone to museum. So if you go to museum, you will find pictures all over the walls. You go to National Archives here in town, you will find pictures all over. You go to any other place, I mean, this place that reserve history and all that, you will always find pictures. And these pictures, they do communicate something. If you've been following what is happening in the country, Boniface Mwangi last year, but one communicated about a post-violence election that happened in 2007 to 08. He did this using the pictures, but again, at the end of it all, I think he was told to stop because the pictures were not that good. So when we are talking of written communication, then it should, one thing that we must notice about written communication is that written communication are usually very official. Mostly they are very official. I know someone might be asking, is texting official? Because you can communicate using a text or other chat. You can be chatting with somebody. You can send emails. So normally, when we are using written communication, it's usually official. And the reason why we make it official is because we want to use it for recording purposes. That maybe in future, we want to refer, either you wrote a letter, an apology letter, if maybe you are working, or rather you are in school, or any other information that you have to give, you give it in terms of writing for recording purposes. So in writing, or rather in written communication, there are 7 or rather that I want us to focus on. There are 7 C's that I want us to focus on, so that these C's will help us know if we are communicating through written communication, or we've just written a handout kind of. So these 7 C's, the first one is completeness. the 7 C's of written communication. The first one is completeness that I want us to look at. And then the second one, so I'll just read all of them, and then maybe I'll explain briefly a few of them, and then later on we can have a discussion around it. So completeness, conciseness, and then we have consideration, and then we have clarity, and then concreteness, and then courtesy, and then correctness. So when we start with the first one, completeness, when you are writing, so we assume in this case, we are writing our CV. So you are communicating through your CV. So if you've done a CV and you are sending it to somebody to go and read it, this somebody is reading about you. Remember, you are not there. This person can't see you. The reader can't see you. The reader can't, imagine of you, or unless he or she read what you've written. And so we are saying that completeness, the information should be complete with all information that is required. Imagine you've written a CV and you've not, you've written a CV, but you've not explained about the careers, or rather the careers that you've done, or your academic qualification. You see, that CV is incomplete. Why? You are not communicating completely. So there's some information that are missing when you are communicating. So when you're communicating through writing, please make sure that you've given complete information so that you don't leave the reader with so many questions, wondering now, what next? What am I supposed to do? Or rather, what am I reading here and all that? I hope that one is clear, that when you're doing written communication, make sure that it's clear. You've completed, you've written everything, you've given everything that needs to be captured in that communication. The second one is conciseness. This one is briefly means that make sure that you go to the point. Just like Sauti Sol did say, short and sweet. Make it short and sweet. Make it short and elaborative. Make sure that we are able to understand what you are communicating through the written communication. Now, I'm imagining of you are writing a cover letter, or you are writing a letter asking for a day off from your workplace. And then you've written kind of a handout. Imagine writing a 3-page cover letter, or a 3-page letter requesting for off day tomorrow. You see, whoever is reading will not be able to go through each and everything. So if you make it short and clear, then that one becomes easier for the reader, and in fact, he or she is able to give that feedback. Now, when talking of making it short and sweet, we also talk of when you're doing emails, don't explain everything. Just write it shortly and let it be understood. The third C that we're talking about is consideration. I think this is where we have most of the problem, because as youth, we tend to forget that whom we are addressing. One, consideration comes in terms of the level of education. So assuming that you are addressing Mama Mboga, either through email, text, or a letter, and you are also addressing a professor, what will be the difference between the letter or email addressing Mama Mboga and an email or a letter addressing a professor? What do you think will be the difference? Anybody want to try?
Maybe you can say for the mama mboga, you should keep it simple. And for the professor, because he's learned, you can now go with the big words for the same thing.
Okay, yeah, great. So with mama mboga, you put it in the simplest term.
Is Ario trying to respond to you? Ario? Sorry.
Yeah.
William, Ario does not understand Swahili.
Oh,
I'm sorry, Ario. Mama
Sorry.
mboga, he meant someone who is not educated.
Oh,
If you're
Mama
talking to
Mboga.
someone who is not educated, or you're talking to a professor. Sorry.
Oh, I'm clear now.
okay. Sorry, Ariel, for that, for using mama mboga. Though I thought mama mboga is a known term, but mama mboga is not somebody who's not educated. But again, how can we put it? Because there are also some mama mboga who are very educated, but we call them low class kinda. So when you are addressing mama mboga and you are addressing a professor, the difference will come on how you are writing. Maybe when it comes to the terminology that you're using. So you don't use very heavy terminology when addressing mama mboga, but again, when addressing the professor, you make sure that you use terminology because maybe you want to gain some marks. So another thing, or rather another consideration, when we are talking about consideration, we also talk of age. How you address an old person is not the same way you address a younger person. I'm imagining in the morning, I gave a talk to little children. And then in the afternoon, I gave a talk to teens. And then in the evening, I gave a talk to youth and young adult. And then maybe at night, I'm supposed to give a talk to parents. You see, the way I addressed little children, or rather the way I addressed children, is not the same way that I'm going to address teens. It's not the same way I'm going to address youth and young adult. And it's not the same way that I'm going to address parents. So age matters, how you address people, how you talk to them. Another thing is the rank. Maybe you are in an organization, or you are in a school, or you are in a church. If you are talking to people, there are different ranks. So how in an organization, how you talk to your colleague will not be the same way on how you address the CEO, or rather the managers of your organization, or we just call them the senior. How you address your junior is not the same way you address the junior. And that comes in mostly again in writing. And in this also, we also consider, when we are talking about rank, we also think of a prefix, the prefix that you're using. If somebody is a professor, make sure that you address them as professor, from writing and even verbally. I hope we are still together. Now, the other C is clarity. Clarity. This simply means that make sure that you are clear what you are addressing. You are clear of what you are addressing, or you are clear of what you are requesting, or you are clear of what you what you are requesting through letters or email. Make sure that you write it clearly and it's easy for the reader to understand. Maybe the second last one that we talk about is courtesy. And courtesy, we say it should consider both sender and receiver. Use polite language. Be kind to whoever you are addressing. I'm imagining of a situation of whereby you are communicating. You are a doctor, or you are a nurse, or you are an intern, or you are a student, and then you need to communicate a certain message, and this message is somehow sad message, and you have to deliver it to the receiver. How you communicate this message should be of great concern, because now imagine you want to pass a message to somebody that they've lost a beloved one. You see how you are going to communicate it, how you are going to convey this message. You should be very courteous, and you should be very considerate. You should be polite. Your language and even your tonal variation, how you are going to speak it out, matters a lot. So try to be kind to whoever you are addressing. Be polite, and also consider the age, how you address one another. Now, the last one is correctedness. Correctedness here, we are talking about, now this one goes to the professionals, that if you are doing a written communication, ensure that your grammar is correct. Make sure that your punctuations are correct. Your sentence structure is correct. Remember, I said that we are not going to go to kind of a classroom setup, but again, this one, they're usually there. Imagine you are writing an application letter, and then you've not followed the format. You have so many grammatical error. The punctuations are not there. The reader, who might, in this case, might be the HR, will just look at that letter in 2 minutes and put it aside. Why? Because you've not communicated correctly. So in written communication, so make sure that you follow the 7C. Make sure that whatever you're communicating is complete. Whatever you're communicating is direct to point. Whatever you're communicating, you've considered whom you are addressing. Whatever you're communicating is clear to the reader, even if he doesn't know or she doesn't know the content. It's very clear to them that they will just read it and get the content. Make sure that you are, at least there is some courtesy when you are addressing, and the last one is your correctedness in punctuation and all that. Up to that point, I see it's already 20 minutes past. Any questions so far? Any question about written communication? Okay, thank you. If there is no question, then we go to the second one, that is verbal communication. Verbal communication. Verbal communication includes sounds, words, language, and speech. Speaking is an effective way of communicating and helps in expressing our emotions in words. And it is good to note that verbal communication, this is where we have the greatest problem as young people. Why? Because, sorry to my friend who doesn't understand Kiswahili, I think here you will also float a bit, but I'll try make it understandable. Now, the reason why we're saying this is where we have the greatest problem is because of the language barrier, or rather the languages that we are using. You see, is this generation and this generation that we are in, we have so many languages. I remember when we were growing up, we used to have Kiswahili, mother tongue, English, and Sheng. Nowadays, we have so many languages. We have one Shembeteng, we have Sheng, we have Lugayamta, we have, and there are so many languages. And then when we come to Sheng, they're also different. So you are even left more confused. That there is this musician who sings Gengeton. He's called Militan. Militan's Sheng is totally different from Katelo's Sheng. Katelo's Sheng is totally different from Madocho's Sheng. Madocho's Sheng is totally different from Shempeteng. So if you are in there between, you are just confused because you don't know which language you can speak or which language you need to speak. So, but we are not saying that if you're speaking Shembeteng, if you're speaking Sheng, if you're speaking Lugamta, you are lost. You are not lost. The reason I'm saying you are not lost is because if you get somebody like Militan, he will speak very well with Madocho, and they will be able to understand each other. But again, this same Madocho will not be able to understand Shembeteng. So the thing that I'm saying is, as young people, as much as we are learning all these languages, then we also need to get some official language that we can communicate. See, nowadays, I find that it's very difficult for young people to express themselves in English or express themselves in Kiswahili Mufti. Why? Because we are so mixed up with these languages, and we are even getting confused. So when we're talking of verbal communication, there are classification that we are supposed to consider. One is intrapersonal communication. Intrapersonal communication, in fact, it comes out better when it's said in Kiswahili. Tunaita uzungumzi nafsi. Uzungumzi nafsi is intrapersonal communication for those who doesn't understand Kiswahili. This is whereby you speak to yourself. This is a form of communication. It is extremely private. And in fact, it's also very confusing. I never understood it, because when you're speaking to yourself, then who is speaking, or rather who is the sender and who is the receiver in this case? Anybody want to try? When you're speaking, when you're doing intrapersonal communication, that is uzungumzi nafsi, who is the sender of the message and who is the receiver of the same message?
Both you and you.
It's you and you.
Both you
That's
and
a
you.
good one. Any other trial?
For me, it's normally me talking to something, as long as it does not respond. Because if it responds, then I need a doctor, a mentor.
So you mean when you're talking to yourself, there is no response?
Not always, because you're asking that item. What do you think? You know.
Is there
That's a good
such a
one.
thing as self-talk now that people are saying now? They have such a thing called self-talk. It's called self-talk. When you encourage yourself, like King David encouraged himself when he was faced with adversity in the Bible, or well, in the Hebrew scriptures. He encouraged himself, and he didn't have anyone to encourage him, so he encouraged himself. And so they call that self-talk. When you encourage yourself, or you say affirmations to yourself to be like a pep talk to help you make it through a tough time if you don't have anyone to encourage you.
Oh, great. Yeah, I like that part. So this is you talking to yourself, and mostly you try to encourage yourself. But again, the only problem is there are so many problems, and we live in a world of depression nowadays. So to some point, you're just talking to yourself, and then somebody thinks that you are either depressed or you're mad or all that. But again, I'll encourage as young people that let's always try to talk to ourselves, because this is now the quiet time that we can always communicate to ourselves after the noise that we've gotten from outside the world, the noisy world that we are living in, the problems that we're facing, the challenges that we're facing. After that, then you need to talk to yourself. You need to reflect about the day. You need to check yourself. How was the day? And then you talk to yourself. If you did something good, then you need to encourage yourself. You say, well done, I did it. If you didn't make it, then you say, you encourage yourself by saying that at least there is another day. But it also depends on how you are doing it. And that's why we call it in Kiswahili, uzungumzi nafsi. So you don't just do it loudly and anyhowly. So the second part is interpersonal communication. Remember, number one, we said is intrapersonal communication. This is where you are communicating to yourself. And then now we have the second one, that is interpersonal communication. So what is this interpersonal communication? Interpersonal communication, this involves two people. It can involve either two people or more. And I believe this is where we also try to miss some point as young people, because now this is where you put consideration. Remember when we were talking about written communication, we were talking of age group. And now when we are talking of interpersonal communication, it's easy and it's also very difficult. Why? Because it depends with whom you are addressing. So if you are addressing people of your age, or rather a person of your age, the language that you use will differ from the language that you use when you are addressing either the parent, the lecturers, the priest, or the church ministers. When you are addressing some official communication, the language also that you use here is very important. Remember, I'm stressing on language. The reason being is because nowadays we focus so much on sharing and then we forget about official language. So what are the effects of forgetting about official language? It's because when we go to address somebody, then these people see as young people, we don't have manners. Young people, we don't know how to speak to people. Yet it might not be your problem. It might be a problem of communication. So make sure that when you are communicating, when you are doing interpersonal communication, you know who you are addressing and you know how to address this person. I hope we are together so far. So the third one is small group communication. Small group communication. Now, this one, it builds our leadership skills. You see, how you address a group is totally different with how you address an individual. Then we say this type of communication can take place only where there's two or more people involved. The number of people will be small enough for you to address. It can be either a boardroom meeting or a round table meeting or a kind of classroom meeting, and then you're able to address these people. So how you address these people is totally different on how you do intrapersonal communication, and it's also different with how you do interpersonal communication. And then now the last classification here is public communication. It's more or less the same as a small group communication. The only difference is now you are addressing either a larger group or different people, maybe different groups. So we say this type of communication take place when one individual address a larger gathering of people. This can be like maybe a political or election campaign. It can be in form of a crusade. It can be in a church, or addressing people either in okay, now this one becomes difficult because I must use English or how to put it. But again, chama and all that, you must know how you are addressing these people. And by this type of communication, it should also be different from a small group communication, because now we assume that when you are doing small group communication, these are people you know. So how you address people you know will be totally different with addressing people you don't know, either in a political rally or in a church. I hope we are together up to that point. Any questions so far before we go to nonverbal communication?
Oh, I was thinking that that's formal and informal communication. With small groups, it may be informal. However, when you were in public, it's formal. It's more formal.
Yes, that's true. When you're in public, it can be formal or it can be informal. Why we think so? Because now when you go to, like, you're addressing political rally, to some point you find it's more chaotic and you don't even understand it. So it can be either formal or informal. In small groups, these are usually very formal, because we assume that you are a leader and you are addressing people. So you have to address them in a formal way. Now we go to nonverbal communication. Nonverbal communication.
Which type is this that you are doing right now?
Nonverbal communication. We are at nonverbal communication.
No, you are now communicating to us via Zoom. Is this
no, this is
public?
verbal. This is verbal.
No, is it
this
public?
Is
it interpersonal? Is it?
Okay, now from my side, because I'm addressing a group, so this is a small group communication. It's a small group communication. You see, we are not many. The only problem is that I don't know all of you, but again, I assume that we are from Linda Vijana Initiative. So with that background, I assume that I know who are my audience, whom I'm addressing. So this make it a small group communication. And then this is verbal communication. We together? Is it
Yeah,
clear?
thanks.
Okay, great. Now, non-verbal communication.
Wasn't written communication non-verbal?
Written communication is non-verbal, is part of non-verbal. By the way, there are different types of non-verbal, and
Okay.
we'll be looking at them as we get there. Now, non-verbal, oh, sorry, any other question before we go to non-verbal, maybe? Okay, now, non-verbal communication is the process of communication through sending and receiving wordless messages. Wordless messages. So it can be either written. Remember, written is wordless because you're not speaking it out. Somebody is reading it. It involves using body languages such as gesture, posture, facial expression, and eye contact. Nonverbal communication also include vocal cues such as tone, or voices. Voices, pitch, volume, and speech rate. It can also involve visual cues such as touch, distance, and eye contact. That line is long, but I hope it's understood. So I take it again. We say that nonverbal is the process of communication through sending and receiving wordless messages. So you know speaking the word, but again, you are sending. So that can be in terms of written communication. It also involves using body languages such as gesture, posture, facial expression, and eye contact. And we say that nonverbal communication also include vocal cues such as tone of voice and pitch, volume, and speech rate. It can also involve visual cues such as touch, distance, and eye contact. Now, when we are using nonverbal communication, we must be very careful because it speaks a lot. It speaks louder than even verbal communication. And with this, we want to look at 4 principles of nonverbal communication. 4 principles of nonverbal communication. So the first principle we say that is that nonverbal communication is continuous. Nonverbal communication is continuous. And it's always happened even when we are not aware of it. For instance, every now and then I'm speaking, I find myself throwing my hands or rather touching things and all that. That is a form of communication. You might find yourself that maybe you are in a meeting, you are quiet, all of you are quiet, but again, somebody is just stamping his feet. That is, it's a form of communication. You are communicating something. Maybe knowingly or unknowingly, you are yawning, but you are communicating. It's only that you don't know. So we say that it is something that is continuous. We don't stop communicating non-verbally. So the second principle is we say that nonverbal communication is ambiguous. This means it can be interpreted differently. It's often open to interpretation. For example, someone might cross their hands, and how you will interpret that one will differ. Somebody might have crossed his hand because he's tired. Somebody might have crossed his hand because he's surprised. Somebody might have crossed his hand because he feels comfortable doing that. But again, how you interpret it will be totally different. And I think the best example that we can give is using Indians. Whenever they speak, they nod their heads. For us, we nod our head only when we are agreeing with something. That's when you will nod your head. And you can also shake your head. That's when you disagree with something. But again, for Indians, you find them, they are either nodding or shaking their heads always as they speak. So you'll find that if you don't understand, then you can either misjudge them or you interpret that kind of communication wrongly. The third principle is that nonverbal communication is often more powerful than communication. This is because nonverbal cues are more difficult to fake. For instance, we are walking and then you ask me, how are you? I'll easily, maybe when using verbal, I'll say, I'm fine. But again, if you look at the facial expression, tells you that, for real, William is not fine. Or you go to a place and then you talk to somebody and then you ask, how are you feeling? It tells you that, I'm very okay, I'm very happy. And then in the next few minutes, you see this person crying. That tells you that this person didn't give, this tells you that verbal communication might not be as powerful as nonverbal, because now nonverbal, you express the real thing. When it comes to verbal communication, you just speak it out. It might not be the real thing, but you just speak it out for the sake of giving an answer. And that's why I normally have a problem with the greetings. Because in our African culture, apart from African culture, we were taught that when somebody tells you, how are you? You will always say you are fine, even if you are not fine. That is now the disadvantages of verbal communication. You will even lie when things are not okay. You just say for the sake, you say everything is okay. And those are the three principles of non-verbal communication. Any question, any contribution so far up to that point? We open the floor for the next 3 minutes, and then I go to the next communication technique.
Well, in my instructor, Dr. Kaleli's class, he was from Kenya, but I was at Liberty University, and he was teaching intercultural communication. And Dr. Kaleli, in the books that he presented, the textbooks, there were categories for when you have an expression on your face, but it's not showing your real expression, whether it's overdoing it or underdoing it. There were names for it, and I'm looking for that book I have so many books, as you can see. But yeah, I was looking for the book that he used. It's somewhere among all these books that I have. But there was a name that he used for when you're under demonstrating or over demonstrating how you really feel, or when your facial expression or your nonverbal communication is not matching up with how you really feel. And I can't remember quite now what it's called. I have some papers that I've done for his class, but there are names, just know.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Now, and the one thing that we also have to note, there might
Yes.
who will fake facial or rather nonverbal communication. But again, nonverbal communication is more real, and it's also very difficult to fake it, because, or unless you are doing it in a form of acting. But again, if you are expressing your feeling, remember we said that communication is expressing the feelings. So if you are expressing your feelings, it's very difficult to fake nonverbal communication, because now we are able to see if at all maybe something is not really good, we are able to see that there is something wrong with this person because of how you, how you communicate non-verbally. But again, with verbally, you can lie, you can give us other stories. But again, that was very good contribution. I believe I'll also try get the name, and if you get it, you can share it with us.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm still looking for the books, and I have like 200 books, and it's impossible. I'm going for a doctorate of ministry, and so I've gotten my Master of Arts in Christian Ministry, my BA, my Master of Science in Education, my Master of Arts in Christian Ministry, and now I'm going for a doctorate of ministry along with a diploma in Anglican Studies. So I have so many books. It's ridiculous.
Wow, that's great. We should address you as our learned friend.
Thank you.
Now, we go to the last, because now I wanted to talk about something about cultural communication, but because of time, so maybe we go to the last one. And the last one is listening communication. listening communication. Remember, we said that communication is, there is that aspect of listening and speaking. So listening is part of it. And that's what now we are going to look at as our last thing. Now, when we're talking of listening, it basically means to listen, to be quiet and listen. So there are some rules that we use when doing listening communication. And the first rule is stop talking, just listen. Don't talk, you just listen to what is being said. And that makes us, okay, people usually say that we were created with the one mouth and 2 ears, so that we listen more and speak less. Yeah, I know it sounds somehow rude, but again, that is the truth of the matter, that we are supposed to listen, but talk less. That is rule number two. Rule number two of listening is prepare yourself to listen. Yeah, you don't just listen. When you are listening, you have to prepare yourself. You have to relax, focus on the speaker, put other things out of mind. The human mind is usually distracted by other things. Like, for instance, I know if we have football fans, now we are thinking, others are thinking on how Arsenal is going to play Liverpool. Others are thinking of what is going to happen tomorrow. Others are thinking, yeah, there are so many things that distract our minds and our listening ability. So we say that, sorry, we say that when you're listening, put everything, or rather put any distractive things aside and listen. And then rule number three, we say that put the speaker at ease. Help the speaker to feel free to speak. And at this point, I'll say that I have experienced that. You've really helped me to speak, and that's how I've tried to rush and manage the time. Why? Because you've given me humble time. When I ask, you are able to respond. So that shows that you are listening. Remember the speaker's need and concern. When maybe you are addressing one-on-one, always try to nod when the speaker is speaking. That shows that you are together with them, you are encouraging them to continue talking. So maintain eye contact when you are on one-on-one, when you are discussing. Show you are listening, show them that you are listening always. And the best way of showing that you're listening is either you nod, either you maintain eye contact, and you agree with whatever they're saying. And then rule number four, we say that remove the distractions. Remove the distraction. Anything that distracts you, remove it. For instance, like in this scenario whereby it's online, there are some things that might distract us. We might have our phone ringings. We might have, maybe we have a pen, we are writing, and then all on the way we lose focus, and then now we start playing with the pen. Please make sure that you do away with anything that might distract, and listen and avoid any unnecessary interruption, either from friends or the distractor that we might be having in our hand. And then number six is be patient. Be patient. Most of the speeches, the talks and all that are usually long, but patience, the way we say that, patience pays. So just be patient a bit, listen, and then you will be able to help. We also say that listen to the tone, listen to the tone. Volume and tone both add to what someone is saying. And that usually happen mostly with those who preach and all that. So you find that when they want to pass a certain message, they will change the tonal variation. I mean, they will use some tonal variation that is totally different from the one they've been using all along. And then the other one is listen for the ideas, not just words. Listen to the ideas, not just words. You need to get the whole picture, not just isolated bits and pieces. Maybe one of the most difficult aspects of listening is the ability to link together pieces of information to reveal the ideas of others. So we try to begin, we try to link the ideas and words so that we don't miss the whole point. And then the last point is wait and watch for the nonverbal communication. Gesture, facial expression, and eye movement can all be important. So when you're addressing, make sure that you use all these gestures, you use nonverbal communication. Remember, we've said that nonverbal communication is more honest than verbal to some extent. So verbal can lie, and then nonverbal always tell us the truth. I think up to that point, I see maybe our time is already up, but I'll like to hear from you some contribution or questions that we might be having. We open the floor.
Thank you. Anyone can unmute and speak, or you can type in and then we can read your question or comment. Zach, you joined late. I don't know if you have any question on something you may have wanted us to mention.
Oh, sorry. The question is now. It's not about the question. Is a contribution on what we've had, and any question that you might be having about communication techniques. Contribution or question that we might be having.
Anne, I see you managed to join. You have something to add? Zach says he understood. He has no question. The session was great. Many thanks to William.
Well, Professor, I know that in our intercultural communication, when we got through our class for about maybe 75% through with the class, it was the topic was mentioned contextualization. Do you have any thoughts on that about meeting the person that you're communicating with, where they are, and being a part of if there are two people who are from different cultures, how they, meet together. There's a meeting of the minds when they both try and communicate, and there's contextualization. If you can mention that.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And that reminds me of a book that was written by Pope Francis called Christus Vivid, that is, Christ is Alive. Now, before writing that book, he did share a questionnaire online, and people were supposed to give their feedback. And one thing that was really challenging among the young people was the immigration and different culture, how to intermarry different culture, because now that's where people found that there's a lot of problem that knowing your culture, rather you understanding my culture, it becomes very difficult, and especially if I'm new to a place, or I've gone to a place as a refugee, or I've just visited a place. It becomes very difficult for you to integrate yourself, or rather to insert yourself into that culture, to be able to understand it. It takes time. It is not that you can't understand it completely, but again, it takes time for you to understand some people's culture. And one thing I'll encourage is that when you are, or rather when you are new in a place, or when you are learning, you are in a place where you are totally new, or rather you are not familiar with that culture, I'll encourage what we call insertion. First, insert yourself, try to learn first. After learning, then you start either talking their languages, their culture, and all that. But again, don't just try doing it immediately, because it might be very offensive. It might be offensive not knowingly. For instance, I remember we were talking about, was it Sudanese? That in Kenya, when you click, like doing, it's kind of an insult. But again, when you go to Sudan, they click to agree. So you see, when they come to Kenya, we will say that these people are very rude. Yet it's simply because we've not understood their culture. So it is very important to understand the culture and do proper insertion before either making judgment or condemning somebody because of maybe a simple mistake they did over the culture.
Yeah, and also to add on contextualization, sometimes it's easier when you're doing verbal communication because the person is there. So you may say something and then the reaction they have, you guess, or maybe they'll ask, in what context are you saying this, for clarity. So it's easier when it's verbal communication because the feedback is immediate. And also I was going to mention the document, Crystal Vivid, especially chapters 5, 6, and 7. This program of synodality, where we are talking of listening to the youth. So it's usually there's more of talking than listening, more of telling, more of commanding. Sometimes you need to listen. There's a saying that goes, listening to understand and not to respond. So you be attentive, as William said. And also another issue I remember, I'm forgetting, when we talk of intrapersonal communication, most of the time we're not affirming, we're not giving ourselves affirmation, but we are usually like condemning ourselves and saying that you're not enough and you're not good enough. We dwell, or we would want to be perfect. So most of the time, this conversation we have with ourselves, it's mostly on the negative, but we need to try and encourage ourselves. Yeah, thank you. Anne's hand is raised. Anne, you have something to say?
Yes, I do have something to say. Yes,
How is
thank you.
Uganda?
Uganda is fine. It's very cold this side.
Oh, Pole.
Thank you so much, William and Kathleen, for the invite. During the first presentation, where before the written series, you asked a question that was, is texting official? I happen to have a scenario with my boss recently where I used to pass on some communication via text, WhatsApp. And when he called me, it seemed to be a disrespect. And I didn't get you when what you answered when you asked this. Is texting official? Can you use it to pass on a quick communication? And how polite can you be when you're talking to someone who is above you?
Okay, thank you, Anne, for that question.
Mm.
Before I answer the question, I think Madam Catherine has just reminded me something that about Christos Vivid. It says that most of the time, instead of talking and listening, we have ready-made answers to people whom we want to speak to. So somebody comes and tells you something, it's kind of, you are now overtaking the story. You knew what he wanted to say. You already had answers before even he asked the question. So I think the last aspect of communication techniques, that is listening, is very important. Let's be good listeners. Let's try to listen first before even giving the kind of ready-made answers that we have. So back to Anne's question, is texting official? Now, texting is not official. It is not official, but you can use it for follow-up. Remember I said that the most official and effective way is email and letters, because this one can be put for recording. Now, because nowadays you use WhatsApp and then you text, and then after 24 hours, the message is deleted, or rather it has deleted itself. So you won't have anything to prove that you communicated. And again, it's also depend with the relationship. For instance, if you are maybe close to your boss, you've sent an email, you can use a text to either ask them to check their email, or you use a call. But again, you cannot, you cannot, like, you request for an off or you request for a sick leave using a text. It's not that official. Official is either you use email and then you use the text to inform them that you've sent them email, or rather you've communicated officially using whichever link that you're using. Though it's not offensive, because now it depends with how you relate, or rather how you are relating with your boss. But again, the most important thing to note is text is not official, email is official. Text can be used maybe when you are communicating something that it's either an information that needs to reach people, but again, not something very official. It's not part of official communication. And I hope it's understood.
And are you answered?
Yes, thank you so much, William.
Karibu.
Thank you, Anne, for the question. And also, I think we would need to add that for the communication cycle to be complete, there is need for feedback, because the message was sent, it was received, it was understood. So the feedback now makes the communication complete, because now the sender again hears from the receiver if it was written, and if it is verbal, they're responding. Because if you're quiet, then the communication is not complete.
Yes, exactly.
So that is a challenge with the youth at the moment, because you send something and they will wait until now you again follow up, and then they're like, yeah, I got your message and you didn't say anything. So sometimes you'll even miss out on something, because the person you are talking to will assume you are not going to be available maybe for that interview, because you never reply to say, I will be attending. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's very important to note that feedback is part of communication. Otherwise, if there's no feedback, then that is kind of monologue. So somebody was speaking to himself. Otherwise, you can put it under interpersonal communication. But because he or she was addressing you, if you've received the communication, then the best thing is to give back, to give feedback so that they know that they've communicated. Otherwise, without feedback, there's no communication. Okay, any other question or contribution?
Yeah, it seems there is no more comments, only from Ariel saying her connection is a bit unstable. Sorry for that, Ariel, but you're concluding. I wish to take this opportunity. I don't know, Otieno, do you have something to say as you conclude? I'm concluding on behalf of Irene. She has dropped off also, I think, about internet. Do you have something to say, Otieno? For Peter?
May I just say thank you for inviting me? I feel really special, and I know that I just finished taking intercultural communications and I received an A, but you know, this is just like a follow-up, and we're discussing some of the same things. So I feel like the class was a very good class. I learned so much. And Dr. Kaleli was a great representative of the country of Kenya as far as the knowledge that left the country and came to the United States and helped out at Liberty University and ended up helping me. And so I feel very grateful. So just thank you so much, Catherine, Kathy, and Professor. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for always showing up, sacrificing for something positive.